Happy Monday evening, folks. It's your host, Hannah, and I'd like to welcome you all back to Wonderful Tonight. Now, this evening, I want to start off with a story and jump right into things. Now, you may have been seeing this spread all over the interwebs last week. The Shein debacle with their metal swastika necklace. But before we get into the details of this, because this is going to start off with an immense info dump, let's ease into the topic with some music first. This is going to be Cheese's That's Okay, or in their Korean title, 꼴대로. Those last two were 양몽음인 by 이바다, or Night Dream, and Sam Kim's It's You featuring Zico. Now, going back to the whole Shein controversy, for those of you who haven't heard of Shein, they're an online retailer that mostly sells a lot of cheap clothes and accessories, along with other things like suspiciously cheap home goods, but my friends have tried them. They're great. Their clothes are honestly hit or miss, but overall pretty decent for the price. Anyways, last week the internet raised a storm after they posted their swastika necklace on sale for, I believe, something like $250 US. Now, before I go on, I would like to clarify that they were indeed selling the Buddhist swastika, not the Nazi one, which would actually be referred to as Hakenkreuz in German. Anyways, since the only antidote for ignorance is to learn, let's do a little learning together, shall we? Now, the word swastika, unbeknownst to the masses, is actually not a German word. It's actually Sanskrit, meaning something along the lines of lucky charm or thing that is auspicious. It dates back to ancient Eurasia, some say Indian regions, and it's a religious symbol that dates back to 500 BCE. So, a little over 2,500 years ago? It's associated with Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism. It's also prevalent in East Asia, where Buddhism has a strong foothold, and has had a strong foothold for centuries. Think in Chinese, swastika translates to wanzi, manji in Japanese, and manja in Korean. Now, you may be wondering at this point, what on God's green earth would Hitler, founder of the German Nazi Party, want with an Asian religious symbol? Sad to say, Europeans have been appropriating culture for a long time. So remember how I said that the symbol came from ancient Eurasia? So Hitler noticed that there were some similarities to Sanskrit and ancient German, along with Germanic and Indian people. He then traced back the ancestral origin of his beloved Aryan race to the Indo-Europeans of the area thousands of years ago. So with his delusions of a supreme Aryan race, along with the fact that a lot of ancient Indian artifacts that were owned by nomadic Aryans often featured a swastika because that's where it originated from. So guess what he did? Yep, he co-opted this religious symbol for his own twisted goals. He took the usually counterclockwise swastika, although there are versions that are clockwise with other religious meanings attached. I won't get into it. Anyways, he took it, he flipped it, he turned it 45 degrees, and then made that his flag with the infamous Nazi Hakenkreuz. This symbol represents many of the biggest atrocities of the 20th century. But before we get into that, here's an apology for overloading you with this bombardment of an impromptu history lesson, honestly, that you definitely did not ask for on a Monday night. As a bribe to get you to keep listening, here are a few more tunes. This song is for those of you who love the vaporwave city pop scene, or perhaps you heard Plastic Love by Maria Takeuchi and wished there was a Korean version like it. This is Neon by Yukika, who is a Japanese solo singer, actress, voice actress, and model. She really does it all. And she sung the song in Korean for your listening pleasure. Enjoy! Welcome back. Now, those last two were 너 손을 잡고 싶어 by Park Moon-chi, which sounded like it was K-pop from the 90s, but is actually from the good old 2018. Oh, how I miss 2018. And the one after that was The Lights Behind You by Sor. Anyways, now that I went over the whole origin story of the horrible anti-Semitic symbol, and now that we know the difference, does that mean the whole scandal is over and everyone can go home knowing it wasn't a promotion of anti-Semitism? Well, not exactly. So, we've learned the difference between a swastika and a Hakenkreuz. Now what? Do I believe that all Nazi symbolism should be banned except in a textbook? Perhaps. But many people are upset and want to throw the whole thing away. This is where things get tricky. Some of you may ask, well, what's tricky about that? It's so clear-cut on how we should proceed. I'd like to ask those people to chill and remember that things aren't black or white. They're gray, and there's never one right way to do things. My question to you all would be, who decides which religions are canceled? Do we get to pick and choose how other people worship? The answer to this one is a clear and resounding no, in my opinion. Not because I said so, but kind of because it's the law? Constitutional right. That being said, why is there this fixation on getting rid of the Buddhist Hindi swastika symbol? I'm sure it doesn't have to do with the current pandemic or the model minority myth that Uncle Sam has been feeding to America since the 60s. I'm sure it's something else. But that being said, why the double standard? Might as well sack the cross. Just for clear reference, I am Christian, so please don't get mad. The Crusades, the Christian Crusades, y'all remember that? It ended up killing about, 1 to 3 million people, the church dubbed heretics? But no one really cares about that, do they? They don't care about all the scandals the church has had, what with little boys? Yes, it is a significantly older event when it comes to the Crusades. But also, we can't exactly deny that we've been conditioned into accepting Christianity as the norm when it comes to religion. And it doesn't hurt that, well, it's the most popular religion amongst European Americans. Side note, I'm not that fond of the term white people. If I'm going to be othered as an Asian American, I'm going to other everyone else too. Equality, not equity after all. European Americans. Anyways, my point being, no one really has the right to point at others and say, that part of your religion is wrong because some insane monster stole your symbol and then did the devil's work with it. No one. I mean, what are you going to do? Burn every temple that refuses to let go of their holy symbols to the ground, and then label them all evil heretics that refuse to change? And doesn't that sound familiar? Couple 100 years old, but pretty familiar in my book. Now this all, in fact, could be due in part to, Eurocentric ideals, maybe. We forgive the Eurocentric religions. We have to put the Eurocentric peoples first before the religions of people of color. Maybe. Maybe not. But I don't think anyone can definitively prove that it hasn't played a part here. Yes, the Hakenkreuz was terrible. It is a symbol that represents so much hate and pain in the world. This is true, but does that give us the right to put other people down and treat them like absolute trash? As if these human beings are bugs? No, no one has that right. No one. It was interesting to see, though, because I like to do my research on both sides to see, what is everyone up to? How are they all seeing this? 'Cause, newsflash, depending on which news source you view, there will be a different kind of bias. Doesn't matter if it's a liberal source or a conservative one, they're all biased and they all want you to think a certain way. That's how modern-day media works. Because the more extremist you are in your politics, the more easy it is to be, divisive and then feed you all the informational drivel that they want to. Because all those clicks add up to money. I want you guys to understand this. All the clicks that you do on the internet, that directly translates to money for these giant corporations, in case you didn't know. So, I looked through the internet. I saw that a lot of my usual, honestly, not my usual. They weren't any big, giant media sources, not the mainstream ones. But a lot of them, BuzzFeed or independent news outlets like that, they all seem to immediately demonize Shein. and not go over why they may or may not have sold the product in the first place. I think it's very important to see the intent behind an action. Of course, yes, there is the old adage, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. But nonetheless, while the damage has been done, we should see whether it's deliberate or not, because that's the difference between first and third-degree murder. And then I popped over to a site that I really don't like to go onto. Fox News. Not the TV. God, I will never give them ratings on television. They don't deserve ads. Just kidding. Anyways, interestingly enough, they seem to defend Shein. And a lot of people, surprisingly, knew that it was of Buddhist origin. I don't understand why these people who are so quick to say Kung Flu would rush to the aid of defending a Chinese retail online brand. Who knows? Perhaps they just like the Nazi version of the Hakenkreuz and want an excuse to flash it around. That could be very true, yes. But it was interesting to see them trying to defend some kind of minority. You don't really see that, ever. Of course, it could have just been a ploy, an excuse to finally bash the liberal media. I've been seeing a lot of that lately. People love to take opportunities to bash liberal media. It's like they want to take a crack at their credibility or something. But it is always interesting to see the same topic from different perspectives. I'm not saying that all perspectives are right. No one can really say that. We all have different ones anyways. But I do believe that it's important to view things from all angles. Because after all, our version of the truth won't exactly be the absolute truth. Something my statistics professor told to me once. I think it was sophomore year of college. He wasn't the professor we were supposed to have, but, you know, CUNY budget cuts. Constant budget cuts. This man pronounced the word guitar the best way I've ever heard it. I think it was Irish. I don't quite remember. But he said there are an infinite versions of the truth, and none of them are the absolute truth. The whole point of statistics is not to find the absolute truth, but to get as close as we possibly can to it. Now, did I get an A in that class? Absolutely not. Statistics is not my forte. That's why I'm in poetry. But what he said stuck by me all these years. I really do believe that in our quest for truth, we can't delude ourselves into thinking that what we know is the absolute, because there's always another angle, and we can't possibly know everything. A Nietzsche quote I want to close this segment off with before we go into some music. This comes from, I think, his book Beyond Good and Evil. I have a lot of complex feelings about Nietzsche. I haven't read this entire book. I just read the part 4, I think. That's the one with all of his aphorisms. He's an interesting fellow. I'll say that for sure. Actually, I might read this book this week. I'll let you guys know how that goes next Monday. If you want to follow along when I'm talking about it, definitely read along with me. Maybe we could do a little radio book club. Anyways, one of his aphorisms that really has stuck by me, which, honestly, a lot of people have probably heard and don't know it's from Nietzsche. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. I know, a lot of the times, we see bad things in the world, and we want to react the same way they made us feel. But that doesn't improve anything. Maybe it'll relieve some stress, but there are 1,000 other more productive ways to do that. No, I'm not going to be preaching from my high horse. I don't have a high horse. And I certainly don't deserve to be preaching to anybody, but just some food for thought. Anywho, this next song is going to be by 모브닝. 내가 사랑한 모든 것들은 나를 눈물 가게 할 테니까. Now, this song doesn't have its own official English title, so I guess the closest translation would be everything that I love will make me cry, something like that. Anyways, here's 모브닝. Those last two were Chanabi's Good Boy Twist and 마음대로 by Kurdu, or Control Me. So we talked about a lot in the first half. Let me try to not get as heavy in the second. 2020 is heavy enough. So, a drama that I started watching recently, psycho지만 괜찮아? It's Okay to Not Be Okay on Netflix. Now, did I watch it because I love the main lead actors? Perhaps. Was I concerned reading the Netflix description for this show? Absolutely. Had me on the edge of my seat. Let me read this description for you guys. A road to emotional healing opens up for an antisocial children's book author and an employee in a psychiatric hospital. Now, some of you may be like, oh, that doesn't sound that bad, Hannah. It's just another romance drama. What's there to be afraid of? Now, in this case, antisocial isn't the widely used term. Antisocial as in, I don't like going to parties and talking to 10 different people at the same time. I'd rather be at home in my hoodie and talk to my one best friend in my small hinky-dinky town. No. Here, antisocial is used correctly as an antisocial personality disorder, what many people may call psychopathy, sociopathy, you know, your Ted Bundys, your Charles Mansons. Those people, yes. They have Seo Ye-ji playing a children's book author who has, honestly, pretty intense antisocial personality disorder. Now, a lot of you may be asking, well, what is ASPD? Let me break it down for you. TLDR. A lot of the symptoms have to do with, tending to lie, not really having regard for the law, acting impulsively, lack of regard for, the safety of themselves and others. Basically, it's like living life without thinking about the repercussions, I suppose, something like that. Just the idea of right and wrong is kind of foreign. These people tend to be, charming, witty, able to manipulate others. These are your narcissistic boyfriends who manipulate you and are abusive. Those people. The ones that might be just impulsive, hostile, violate your rights by being intimidating or dishonest. So, my first thought when I saw this drama was, how on earth is this supposed to be a romance drama? Those people don't really get love. Emotions are kind of a foreign concept to someone with ASPD. I'm not a professional, so I wouldn't say that they feel nothing. I think that's a different thing. What I do have is a minor in psychology from Baruch College, a business school. But stay with me, folks. So you have this person who supposedly shouldn't be able to feel repercussions, doesn't really get right and wrong. Feelings of guilt, remorse are a foreign concept. I couldn't believe how they were going to make her fall in love with someone. But it is still an ongoing show, and yes, I binged all 5 episodes that I hadn't been watching in like a day because I like to hate watch. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll curl up with a great B-rate comedy movie and I'll laugh my ass off. It's great. Sometimes I'll watch something absolutely terrible just to get mad, honestly. It's like watching a Mets game without the sports. Don't get mad. I too am a Mets fan, and honestly, it hurts. Anyways, at first when I saw the title, It's Okay to Not Be Okay, I thought it was a weird title. And then I saw the Korean title, Psycho지만 괜찮아? Now, at first, I thought it was the Korean version of Psycho, which I recently came to realize does not exactly mean the word psycho as in English. Konglish is very strange. It takes English words and gives them different meanings. Anywho, you know how here psycho is short for psychopath? It's shorthand. Psycho just means someone's crazy. So someone you don't like in class could have just done something that you don't really understand why on earth they would do that in class, and you'd go, that guy's a psycho. But it doesn't mean psycho in the normal American English sense. It was very confusing to me at first, I will admit. So I didn't really expect them to have an actual psychopath in their show. I was curious what they meant by antisocial. But the entire show seems to revolve around different types of mental illnesses. Now, for those of you who are Asian American, that might be a surprise that an East Asian country is actually trying to televise mental illness, mental disorders, what they're about, what they actually mean for a person, why it might happen. Now, while watching, a few things may have stuck out to me as kind of unrealistic. It wouldn't have happened that way. Or they progressed the healing path way too fast. And something that should have taken, like, I don't know, a year of therapy happened in an hour. These things. Small details that I just have qualms about. On the up and up, the show's half decent. They have interesting characters. The plot is interesting enough. It seems to be fueled by this kind of fairy tale motif, which I kind of understand. It ties in with the whole main character is a children's book author. She writes creepy fairy tales. Actually, no. All fairy tales are creepy. If you guys have never read the original tale of, like, I don't know, Snow White or The Little Mermaid, if you actually cherish those Disney movies, do not read into what the actual fairy tales are. They're quite grotesque. Cinderella, disgusting. Anywho, it was very interesting to see this depiction of mental illness in mainstream Korean media. On Netflix, nonetheless. Actually, no. Netflix does seem to push the boundaries of what they deem acceptable on TV. And for Korea, that line used to be a mental illnesses, especially with all of Asia's misconceptions surrounding mental health. The whole idea that if you go to therapy once, it'll be on your record and it'll follow you around forever, and you won't get anywhere in life because people will always judge you for it and they'll think you're crazy. Not exactly the best outlook to have, especially when you're trying to get better. Also, something I noticed, a lot of the time they seem to believe that every case is going to also be the most extreme version of a case. This is absolutely not true. Mental health, like normal health, is on a spectrum. Someone can have more severe symptoms than others. Some people can be very manageable. Some people you might not even know because they have it under control, whether that be through medication or therapy. They're normal people. It's like how someone with a cold is a normal person, except they're just kind of sick. And I don't know, they might be more tired or irritable than usual because their body's literally fighting a disease within them. That applies to mental illnesses as well. Now, while most people can be functional, it still takes a toll on the body. That's right. Y'all thought I was going to say it takes a toll on the mind. It does that too, but it also takes a heavy toll on the body. Now, why is that? Well, let's say you have the flu. You're sick, your body is raging, it's trying to fight this from the inside so you can be healthy again, because it doesn't like being sick. The human body does not like being sick. You can quote me on that. Anyways, let's say you drag yourself to school. You go through all your classes, and then you drag yourself to work, socialize with people, get your work done. Now, if someone came up to you and said, "Oh, why are you acting so down? Just cheer up," would you or would you not be upset with them? Now, I get it. Mental illness isn't something that you can necessarily see, so it's a bit harder. But that's why we just need to learn to be a little more understanding about those things. Now, while I do believe that this show is taking a step in the right direction, I don't know. I do have a few questions when it comes to how things are presented. Because every episode you kind of see a different type of person with a different type of disorder. It always seems to be the most extreme case for some reason. And I don't understand why, but for some reason one of the people, the characters, had bulimia, but also she was a nutcase. I don't know who thought those things correlated, but they don't. I mean, I guess there could have been some other underlying thing plus bulimia. I don't know. They don't go into it, which I think they should. They're sending kind of this whole message that, look, crazy people, and they all have to stay at the psychiatric ward because they're not functioning members of society. Yes, those people do exist. Those people are valid, and they deserve the help that they require. But also not everyone is like that. You could be bipolar and have a normal day job, and honestly, no one could know. They might just be like, oh, this person's really being a go-getter today. Good for them. Something nice might have happened. That's normally the manic stage of bipolar. Side note, bipolar is not when you change your mind every 5 seconds about something. That's called being indecisive. Bipolar is when you are sometimes depressed, like normal depression, And sometimes you have a manic state where you're kind of hyper, you're kind of more impulsive. These things could lead to bad decisions, perhaps, or you could take on more than you can actually handle. Anyways, but this drama decides to portray a man with manic episodes as this insane guy who likes to go streaking. Now, they got some of the symptoms correct, but I don't know. I do want to give them credit, but also they kind of missed the mark. So, B-. Now, before I start to skew off away from talking about the drama and more into mental illness in the Asian community, let's listen to some music. This is going to be Suvi's Make the Move featuring PH1. Enjoy. Now, those last two were Chanabi's She and Dry Flower by His Heart. As I was talking about earlier, mental health in Asian communities. Now, a lot of you may or may not be aware that in the Asian community, a lot of the times failure is seen as a result of not trying hard enough. So, if you're not happy and if you're struggling with your mental health, you must be doing something wrong. I do believe that this mentality takes a big toll on trying to talk to the older people about mental health. Despite the fact that more than 13% of Asian American or Pacific Islanders in the U.S. were diagnosed with a mental illness in the past year, and those are only the people who decided to go and get diagnosed. Now, as Asian Americans report fewer mental health conditions compared to their European American counterparts, they are unfortunately more likely to consider suicide. Unfortunately, suicide is the leading cause of death for Asian American and Pacific Islander youth that are ages 12 to 19 years old. I do think that this directly correlates to the fact that Asian Americans are 3 times less likely to seek mental health services compared to other Americans. We have a huge stigma in our community that therapy is bad, it's a sign of weakness, and it'll follow you around and haunt you forever. All of these things are not true. First of all, let's talk about the biggest and most easily disprovable myth. No, this record will not destroy your life because, like all medical professionals, this is strictly information that is tied to the doctor and the patient, and maybe if you have an insurance provider, they might know what's up a bit because they have to pay for things. It won't be leaked to the public. No one else will know, not even your job providers, unless you decide to self-report that. And if for some reason your doctor does spill the beans, you can sue them for damages because they're not supposed to do that. Now for the other stigmas. Getting help is not a sign of weakness. It's honestly the opposite. Because to know that there is an issue or problem that you want to fix and then to go out of your way to fix it takes an incredible amount of strength and resilience and dedication, and no one should ever be shamed for doing so. It is not a sign of failure to recognize that you may or may not have issues or be ill and want to get better. That's not a sign of failure. That means you are self-aware enough to know what's up with yourself and know how to get better. Intelligence level 5,000. Now, a lot of the times, Asian parents might not understand what it means to go through poor mental health or to actually have a disorder or condition. Honestly, I'm sure more than half of it is due to fear because it's something that they can't fix. No matter how hard you work or they work, it's not something you can just boom, fix by working a little harder. I think deep down they do understand this, and that terrifies them. So a lot of the times they can be dismissive and say, no, you don't have that. You're fine. Don't worry about it. But unfortunately, that kind of attitude still hurts. Also, a lot of the times, we don't really treat mental illnesses the way we do other physical diseases like heart disease or cancer, where we take preventative measures, see early onset symptoms and try to figure out how to prevent it from exacerbating. But a lot of the times we don't really take mental illnesses seriously unless it's life-threatening, which is also harmful because having depression doesn't mean that you're about to take your life right here, right now. That's not what it means. Like something like cancer, there are different stages, there are different levels of severity, and just because you are a less severe case does not mean you're less deserving of getting help. Now, getting help and having good access to mental health providers is a whole nother story. Insurance companies may or may not enjoy covering it. For some reason, it's expensive. I mean, also, this is America and all health-related activities are expensive. Like, why is giving birth to a child $10,000? Someone explain this to me. And then they charge you for holding your own baby after you've given birth to it. They call it skin-to-skin contact. I think they add like $40 to your bill. Insanity. Absolute insanity. But if you're a student and you have access to free mental health checkups or screenings, definitely take advantage of it. I mean, it's like getting tested for COVID. Knowing doesn't hurt anybody. Knowledge is power. And there's no such thing as bad knowledge. Only bad ways to implement knowledge. That being said, another side note, getting help is also not a bad thing. Just because you decide that you need therapy and that you need to sit in a room and talk to a certified stranger for like an hour every week, doesn't mean you caved in. Just because you decide to try out medication to try to control your symptoms, doesn't mean you caved in. I mean, if I'm sick, I pop a Tylenol and hope my fever goes down. You can do the same. And hey, I mean, if Prozac can help you not feel like absolute scum and help you get up in the morning and live your life better, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you take that option? I don't understand. I mean, I understand, but there's a better option and we shouldn't be ashamed to take it. I'm saying all of this because having to deal with something like this alone can honestly exacerbate symptoms, feelings of loneliness, and just be more detrimental to your mental health. Having to shoulder a burden by yourself for anything, not even just this, for any problems you have in your life, it makes everything in life harder. It's always great to be able to trust a friend and allow someone who loves you to help. I got that from Uncle Iroh. The man and his infinite wisdom and tea. You gotta love him. If you haven't already, please watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's amazing. Now, before I go on a whole spiel and tangent about why Avatar: The Last Airbender is amazing and how they were able to take, well, real-life giant issues and make it digestible for a children's show, I'm going to play Kevin O's 어제, 오늘, 내일, or yesterday, today, tomorrow, because there is never, ever a wrong time to get help. You are never too late. It is never not the time. And also, I generally believe that society would be a much better place if every single person went to therapy. We all have baggage. We all have issues. Might as well have a professional help us deal with it, you know? Well, here's Kevin O. Now that was Concrete by Dawn featuring Cheese and Sunmi's Noir. Now, if you haven't seen that video already, I definitely recommend the watch. I don't usually watch music videos, but I found this one quite entertaining. It seemed to wrap up Instagram culture very well, even though it came out in 2019. Seemed like a good reflection of what Instagram kind of looked like back then. Anyways, I'd like to welcome you all to this week's Astrology Corner. Now, I would like to preface this by saying I don't pick and choose whatever it is that I want to say. I actually do go look up other, Tumblr, Instagram accounts that actually have people who know how to read stars. I'm not really sure behind the pseudoscience of it all, but it's interesting enough. Anyways, Chiron is going in retrograde right now. So, if you find yourself being triggered by someone's actions or words or just upsetted by how people are talking to you or doing things, it's a good time to think before reacting because of this tiny body in the sky that's supposedly looks like it's going backwards. But still good advice. It's good to think before you react, just so that you're not talking from the heat of the moment, because you don't want to be in a situation that you don't like and then have no one to blame but yourself. No, I've seen people still find a way to blame anything or anyone but themselves. Don't let that someone be you. It's a good time to connect with yourself. Try not to let your ego take over in an attempt to fuel itself with self-righteousness. Allow yourself to de-escalate your own emotions, because while all emotions are valid, we don't want to act impulsively on them. Understanding ourselves and our emotions is so that we have some kind of control over our beings. It's a great time for self-understanding and self-reflection. Yet again, another inspirational Uncle Ira quote. It's time for you to look inward and start asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want? That's it for this week's Astrology Corner. Coming up next is 지금이 아니면, Now or Never by Safika, featuring Crush and 우원재. Enjoy! And that was 볼빨간 사춘기's 나비와 고양이, featuring 백현. Their English title being Leo, for some reason. But that's besides the point, I guess. Now, I talked a lot about mental health, how tricky it is to get it recognized within the Asian community. But here are a few tips on things not to say to someone with a mental illness. Yes, I got this list off the internet, so maybe it won't apply to everyone, but it sounds very right. Phrases like, it's all in your head, or come on, things could be worse, or but you have such a great life and you seem so happy. Or everyone can be a little down or depressed sometimes, it's normal. This too will pass, you just need time. It's all a part of God's plan, just try to be positive. Now, for some of you, you may think, oh, but what's so bad about saying things? I'm just trying to be nice and caring for my friend, and what's so bad about saying this? Let me explain why. Honestly, the intention might be nice, but unfortunately, a lot of these phrases are, oh, but that problem, it's okay, it'll go away. That's basically the message it kind of ends up sending. It might discourage someone from actually seeking help, and it also kind of just sounds like you're trying to normalize this, as if it's not a real issue, and something that should be addressed with seriousness, something that working towards fixing. It's very diminutive. But here are a few things you can say instead, because I know it helps to not just list what you shouldn't be doing, but also provide an alternative to what you can do instead. A lot of people don't do this. They like to point out problems and not provide a solution or some kind of solution or even an end goal that they're working towards. I don't know if you've noticed, that seems to be a gigantic pet peeve of mine. If you're going to point out a problem, you damn well better have a solution backed up. Anyways, things you can say instead. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate that you're opening up to me. Or talk to me, I'm listening. Or would you like to talk about what you're going through? Things like that. Try to encourage help. Try to encourage the openness. Make it a safe space. I know a lot of people are annoyed at the phrase safe space. It's valid. It makes sense. The world is so distraught and dangerous. Human beings need to know that there is a safe place, that they can be vulnerable. Because, guess what? Having your guard up 24/7, it's not good for you. Believe me, it's not. I guess that kind of got heavy towards the end, but honestly, not as much as I thought it would. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's show. Talked about a lot of different things and a lot of what some might say jarring opinions. I hope that this little peek into my psyche and what I believe in has been illuminating for you all. And I'd like to thank all of you who are still tuned in and haven't left yet for listening to the entire program. And I hope to see you all here next week. So until then, here are a couple of songs to enjoy. This is Holiday by Soyun or 화손. Thank you for listening. This has been Wonderful Tonight.